And we're here with the beautiful Bert. Thank you so much, gorgeous woman, for jumping on BU Podcast, the podcast for parents. And today I'm super excited and totally honored to have you on and speaking into your unique personality and who you be, which is totally perfect and in line with this podcast. So thank you for being here, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. It's such an honor. Yeah.
So privileged to stand beside this beautiful woman, and she just radiates an immense aura and presence and joy that she brings into the world. So it's such a pleasure to have you here, gorgeous.
Thank you. I would love to say a little bit about you as well.
That was unexpected.
Yeah. Well, you introduced me. Yeah. Thank you so much. It really is an honor because I really felt your authenticity from the first moment we met. Like you were just yourself, and I felt so safe to be myself. And there was nothing you needed from me. You were just doing your thing and being the bright, curly, sunny spot that you are. And yeah, and it was like this beautiful permission piece. So thank you.
I totally receive that with a full heart and an open heart. So thank you so much. But today is not about me. It's about you bringing your magic to the world. So I would love for us to kick off by, I guess, sharing a little bit about who you are and how you got to be where you are right now.
Oh, alrighty. So I am right now, I'm a meditation, breathwork, and mindset coach. It's been a massive journey. It started, I would say, like the wake up moment started about 6 years ago when I was engaged to my partner who I'd been with for 5 or 6 years at that point. And I had felt like there was something wrong, like really wrong. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I had all these coping mechanisms and they weren't really cutting it anymore. Like exercise, eating shit, sex with my partner. It was just like there's something very wrong here. And on a very distant level, like on an intellectual level, I was like, it's probably because you got sexually abused when you were 12 and you never actually healed it. But it was all intellectual because I'd read like heaps of stuff on it. Even as a kid, I Googled it because I was like a very like a nerdy Asian, like I was that one, the Asian nerd. And so I Googled it.
Right.
Yeah, you did. Because I was like, this probably is like this thing that happened to you was probably really bad. And so maybe you should try and fix it. And and I went through all of high school and all of my early 20s, like kind of intellectualizing it away. Like, nah, it was bad, but like you're fine. Like you're still, you didn't like start doing crazy drugs. You didn't like, you're not self-harming or anything like that. You're not suicidal. And there was a little caveat, it's like yet, right? But it's like yeah, it's okay. But then there was this like increasing pressure on my chest and my entire being, like throughout my entire high school, where I was like, dude, something is fucked. And it was like it wasn't until I was like 20 something that I really like I had this wake up moment where I was crossing the road and I had this thought go through my head because I hadn't checked for traffic. And I was like, oh my God, what if a car hits you? And I felt like such a wave of pure relief at that moment.
Wow. And that's a monumental moment, I could imagine, to witness your own thinking around your mortality. What was that moment like for you? And what was the moments that actually preceded that, as in followed, like the moments that followed? Because that's a pretty profound and
Yeah,
to witness that thought. So not only did you have the thought, but you actually witnessed yourself having that thought. You were conscious of that.
exactly. That was the difference. It was like before this underlying feeling of dread. I was having heaps of nightmares. I had insomnia, but I just didn't know that's what it was.
Mhm.
And then to have that such clarity around this thought, I was like, and then the next thought was, well, then you won't have to deal with this shit anymore. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So then I was like, okay, cool. Like now it is really important that you do something about this.
Yes. And did you
Mm.
know that it was from your childhood and what you had experienced? Had no idea.
No, I just knew something was off. Yeah, and
And I
so
think a lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people are feeling this feeling inside where there's more, or there's this dread, or this I don't want to wake up, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to do life, and they don't know why.
mm,
So I think a lot of people, a lot of our listeners can resonate with that, and I certainly was like that at one point in my life. So
mm.
what happened for you next for you to, I guess, start to uncover that?
Right. So then at that point, I just realized I was like, okay, if you don't do anything, you will stop caring about doing anything. Whereas at least up until this point, I'd kind of been trying to fix it in my own way through my coping mechanisms.
Mhm.
But then at that point, I was like, nah, I really don't want to get to the point where I don't care and this is just my life. Like that feeling you're talking about, like, yeah, something's wrong, something's missing. Why don't I want to get up? Why is interacting with people that I love so hard? Why do I feel fucking guilty all the time? Like
Mm.
all those little things. And I was like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to accept that that's my life. And so my friend Jade came back from Vipassana. And so Vipassana is like a 10-day meditation boot camp where you don't speak for 10 days, no food after 12, meditating for 10 hours a day, etc. I can tell you know what that is, Chrissy.
Yeah, but a lot of our speakers and a lot of our listeners would not have a clue what that is. And I know even for myself, like, man, you just said that word and I'm just like, that it terrifies me, which means I know I need to do it. But, sis, wow.
Yeah, it was so powerful. So she came back, she told me to go, and I was like, yes. There was no part of me that was like, oh no, like, but I'm scared, or like, nah, that sounds dumb. It was just like, yes. I was like, full body, yes, take me, someone help. And so the universe kind of pulled me into it, and I just applied. It takes like 6 months for everything to go through because, oh yeah, because there's always a wait list because it's free. And so yes, I got pulled along by the universe. I didn't know back then, by the way, because I hadn't started meditating. I didn't know. Like my friend Jade would be like, "Oh, thank you, universe," and I was like, "What?" Like,
What do you mean by the universe?
yeah, yeah. I was like, "That's just so weird. Why is she vegetarian?" Anyway, so judgmental.
I think
Oh,
that's so relevant that before we sort of start to wake up, for want of a better word,
yeah,
that we're like, why are people vegan and vegetarian? Why are people
yeah,
spirit? Like, what is the universe and what is this manifestation? And what do you mean by
yeah.
gratitude? And like all these
Yeah. Why
terminology.
does everyone call everyone a goddess? Yeah, so I had none of that and I went into this course and straight away I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is this? This is horrible. But then I was like, well, what are you gonna do? Go back to your horrible life or stay in this horrible course? And I was like, I guess I'm staying then.
I love
So
that,
then,
weighing up the options of like which sucks better.
yeah, which sucks better.
And well, I know how isn't it that pivotal moment of like, well, I know how my life works right now and it sucks. And I know that if I don't change something, that nothing will change. And there is a comfort in that because you know how everything works. But also there is an incredible discomfort and knowing that something is fucking wrong. So when
I
we
think, yeah.
choose to actually step into something that is new and daunting and uncomfortable and so unknown, it's like, what do I do? It's a pinnacle moment in change, and it's
Yes.
beautiful, and it's choice.
Yeah. And I feel like the
Chose to
big
stay.
difference between the two of them is that one has hope and one doesn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, let that land. Has hope and one does not. And then what happened?
And then I was sitting on day 6 or day 8. I was sitting behind a girl who was really spiritual looking, and she had every day you get 5 minutes with the teacher where you get to ask them a question. And she's sitting there and she's like meditating, and then she said to the teacher, she's like, "Oh my god, I was like meditating and I just started to like cry and I felt like I was going to be sick and I just don't understand what's happening to me." And I was sitting behind her with my eyes closed thinking,
Love your
what a fucking hippie. That will never that will never happen to me.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's so good, eh?
Just before we've jumped on here, you were talking about process and how like you dropped in and you're emotional and everything. Oh, happy.
Fully out. Yes. I'm like confused when I have to wear shoes now. I'm like, why does everyone have to put things on their feet? But back then I was just so like, I was like, yeah, no, that's not gonna happen to me. If I get really strong back out of this, I will be really happy. And so I like went back to my room and then I started to think about it a little bit more. And as I did, like I will never forget this feeling of like all of the stuff that I intellectually knew that was like bad, but not that bad, like my stepdad's abuse and all that stuff. It just started to like almost like fog up on the outsides of my vision. I didn't have the language back then, but I would just say, on my consciousness, it was like in my peripheral. And I was like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And I really, the first time in my life, I was excited to actually embrace it because I was like, oh my God, like I've always thought maybe this was bad and maybe this was why I couldn't feel things as well anymore. But now I'm actually gonna face it. And so I just surrendered. And like and I didn't have that language back then. Like I didn't know what surrender was. It just kind of like fell all over me and then went boom, like like a huge, like those big hoods, like safety hoods, like in science labs. It was like and then I was like sucked into like my like little girl self, and I was re-experiencing all the stuff that I'd known was there but wasn't willing to actually feel and acknowledge.
And you survived facing it.
Yeah, it was bliss.
Yeah.
It was horrific and it was bliss because it was like it just it was like it was the truth.
Oh, yes.
That's why.
And I think a lot of people are scared to face off with what's happened in the past because they feel like they won't survive. They feel like it's too much, it's too hard, it's too traumatizing, it's too painful. And it's all of those things, right? It's all of those things to experience and to relive again. But it's also like the most empowering and liberating feeling to actually witness it, to know that we survived it then, and then to just actually bear witness to the why, to understand that it happened for you, not to you. There's so much beauty in that afterwards, and I love how you speak about it's truth.
Yeah,
What does truth in that moment look like, sound like, feel like for you?
it's a feeling of coming home.
Mm,
There's no more denial, no more suppression, no more numbing it out.
mm,
It's just like visceral physical pain and elation and ecstatic bliss.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when you came home, you had this epiphany moment, you had this moment of truth. You lived
Yeah.
after facing off with your shadow.
Yes. 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 And I'd never felt so clear in my entire life. I was like in my head, it was like, that song, it's like, I'm walking on sunshine. Ah! I just felt like I was like skipping down the street in my head.
Oh my God. I think the amount of times I think I've died and been reborn and I have that song literally in my head and I'm like, it's literally, it's like a silent disco.
Yeah. I actually get songs come through depending on my emotional states. Like Yeah, and I'm always like, oh, cool. Yeah, so I came home, and I'm gonna fast forward through a bunch of stuff. But basically, me and my fiance ended it because we just weren't aligned. I went to the UK to try and find myself, didn't really work. Oh, but it kind of did. I learned a lot. And then I went into a like really challenging relationship with a man who um, he just had a lot happen to him in his own childhood. And so it was like our wounds were just talking to each other the whole time. We just trauma bonded the shit out of our relationship.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about.
oh my God, yes. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can relate to that element too,
Mm,
without knowing that language or knowing what's actually happening. But when we've gone through stuff, and we all have stuff, and we bring our stuff, and that's what relationships are, they bring up our stuff. We generally don't know that though. And so when you have two people that have come from trauma and then you bring them together, it's like a apocalypse.
yeah.
And you can choose to literally go to war. And
Mm,
effectively what you're doing is going to war with yourself, with your shadow.
yes. Yeah.
And out of that comes great change.
Oh, so much transformation.
Or you can stay victim.
Yeah, 100%. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. I completely lost myself. I put all of my worth in his eyes, and it was so painful. I just was so, it was all about how I can save him and how I can save the world, and I'm a terrible person, all the stuff. And then, yeah, and then, oh, the one phrase that like really stuck, he never said this to me, by the way. He is beautiful, but he has his own wounds. The one phrase that really stuck was like, don't be a piece of shit. And I spent like the next 3 years after that just trying to avoid being a piece of shit by like serving in every way that I possibly could. And I was just in such a low place that I was like, okay, what's the thing that saved you? And it was like, cool. It was meditation. It allowed you to connect with who you were. And then you were able to actually be free and then really, really serve. And I was like, cool, I'm going to go give this gift to everyone. And so I did that for a while. And then no one came to my events because meditation is boring as. So then.
I love how you just blatantly like it's boring as fuck.
Yeah, and I just thought it was so funny and true. Yeah, and so then I created Calmably, which was the meditation with baby goats, which just blew up and went off. And it wasn't probably until the last year and a half that I actually discovered that all of that was still coming from the wounded place of I don't want to be something. I don't want to feel ashamed of myself anymore. I don't want to feel sad anymore. There was no like, I do. I do want to be free. I do want to be happy. I do want to be loved. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I know.
Get to that place of like I'm still doing I'm doing such epic things in the world and I'm still distracting myself from my trauma.
Yeah,
What a
yeah.
fucking epiphany.
Oh, it was so beautiful. I was like, damn it.
Yeah, there's definitely that element of like, here I was thinking I was doing all the right things, but the truth, I'm still distracting myself from my shit.
Yeah, but all I had done was like what so many of us do. It's like we take out all the negative coping mechanisms and we put all these super healthy mechanisms in, but it's still the same pattern playing itself out in my life. And so, yeah, it wasn't until last year that I went into full receivership and I was like, no, 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 more of this bullshit. I'm just gonna like actually love myself and do what I can tell everybody else to do and forgive myself repeatedly and like, oh, and be with all the shadow and the darkness and understand that the being with that, no matter how terrible it feels, is the act of unconditional love. It's like, yeah, you feel terrible and I'm gonna sit here with you through it all. Like that's real love.
So I would love for you to speak into what receivership means. What does that mean to you? And
Mm.
our listeners listening into this that are probably resonating to some degree to your story, whether it be that they're right in the beginning, whether it be that they're starting to witness their shadow, or whether it be that they're actually now out there actively serving and helping people, but still hiding from their stuff. What does full receivership, surrender, whatever you want to call that, what does that look like? What's some examples that you can elaborate on for our listeners to understand how they can too do that?
Mm-hmm. So at its most basic level, full receivership is like, for years, people have given me like beautiful compliments, reviews, like they've told me they love me, and I wouldn't receive it. I'd just negate it or justify why that wasn't true. Like even if like someone, and it's like, it can be so unconscious. Like my brother, whom I love and adore, like there is, and I feel it now, a deep knowing that he loves me. But there's a part of me that doesn't want to believe it because she doesn't think she's worthy. And it's
that she. Who are you referring to?
referring to my little girl or my teenager, the different stages which have different wounds. Right? Oh, this is so awesome! I'm so glad you brought that up, right? Because like at every stage of our development, there's like the child, right? And so the child relies wholeheartedly on the parent for survival, and that requires her to sacrifice her authenticity in order to meet the parent's demands so that she can feel loved. So then she's left ultimately with the sense of, there's something wrong with me if I show up in my natural self. And so the next phase is the teenager, and the teenager is like desperate to find community, desperate to belong and fit in. But what she doesn't realize is that everybody else is also trying to fit in, and so everyone else is also wearing a mask, and so no one ultimately fits in with anybody, and everyone's left feeling alone.
Wow. So receivership is actually listening to what others are complimenting you with and witnessing those parts of your either inner child or inner teenager that or felt like they didn't have that growing up. Is that what you mean?
So at its most top level, receivership is like receiving attention, love, and gifts, and all that from other people, and letting them serve you, like really letting them serve you without guilting yourself for it. Because guilt is a choice. It's like I can, like even with you on this podcast, I can like be like, oh, like poor Chrissy, she has to like listen to me babble, and like, and then like, and she's giving me this gift. Like a part of me is like, what the fuck? Like I should try and give her something. Like I need to make, I don't know, give her flowers or invite her to like speak at my event or something, right? Because I don't want to receive the full gift of it. But full receivership is like, no, she wants to honor you as a human. Let her.
Yeah.
Yes, just let her love you.
Let yourself be seen.
Yeah.
Powerful.
And then speaking about like the little girl and the teenager, it's like, yeah, so those are the two core wounds, and it's just like, it's like littered with like other experiences that we've made stories about. And it's learning to like be willing to speak to those parts of ourselves that have made themselves wrong, like the shadow, like you're saying, and show them that they can feel scared. You can be scared. They can feel sad and angry, and you're still lovable and you're still worthy. In fact, it's like that's what makes you worthy. And people, what I really don't like about some spiritual practices is there's like a lot of like emphasis on telling yourself that you're worthy and telling yourself that you're beautiful and you're perfect, right? But then there's no actual willingness to go and sit with yourself when you're being a piece of shit, because that act, like you don't need to say anything, that act of allowing yourself to be sad and angry and afraid is pure love. It's like, I don't need you to be anything right now. I don't need to tell you something. Just being it.
Fuck yes. Beautiful. And I think too, as you speak into that, there is a lot out there where it's like almost affirmations of like you having to try and convince yourself that you're something. That breeds this incongruency and authenticity, because there's like this disconnect between what they actually unconsciously believe and what they're trying to consciously create and manifest.
Yes, I love you. Yes.
Yeah. So then to just be present with yourself in all of the glory, it is glory, because it's bearing witness to everything, and there comes the freedom and enlightenment and liberation.
And that's it. And even if it's like messy and gross and like, ugly or whatever, it's like people will feel the energy of it. they'll feel the freedom, the pure love that it comes from, and then they'll mimic it too, which is like, oh, even better.
Yes, 100%. So I want to actually now, as you've spoken about the stages, I think it's so important for us to speak into that for people that are on their journey of being able to uncover their own traumas or uncover where they feel like there's something wrong. They feel like they need to be fixed. I would love for you to speak into what would you recommend for someone who's maybe in the early or mid phases of that, where maybe they don't know their inner child yet, what that could mean for them to start actually exploring that, and how can they start exploring their inner child, reparenting themselves?
So the biggest step for me was actually just starting to speak the truth, because for so many of us, we're still trying so hard to please everybody else and like fulfill the needs of what society thinks we should be. But as soon as we start just speaking the truth, we can actually feel in our bodies like what's really going on. And what you're saying, like for people who are midway in their journey, it's like there's still that kind of like, what's happening to me? Why do I keep spontaneously crying and laughing? Like, what's happening? And so,
like fucking shitting myself or like pushing people away or like doing all the things. Yeah.
yeah. And for a lot of people, like they think, okay, well, tell me how to do it though. How do I do it right? How can I like fix all of this shit? And the thing is, you can't. You can't do it right through your expression of your truth, even if in that moment your truth is a lie. And I'll explain that in a second. You will find the way because you'll feel it in your body. And so a lot of people like that, they're like, oh, I don't know how to be authentic or truthful. I don't know how to be myself. It's like, yes, you do. You just start saying shit. And then eventually your body kind of like does this thing where it's like contraction and you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't feel good. So that's probably a lie. But then you just say something else, which is the actual truth. And that feels really good. But a lot of people are like, oh, a lot of people are like, I don't know how to start this journey. And it's like, we can't tell you, because only your body can tell you. It knows all the trauma is hidden in pockets at a cellular level throughout your body, and it knows, and it will give you a red flag or a signpost. There'll be some tightness in your chest, some weird curling of your shoulders, some like shaking in your belly. It's like you fucking feel it, and then you trust that feeling and you keep showing up in your truth, and you meditate. I'm going to add that in case people are not meditating, because like when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like a wild ride. And sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the ego, like the stories that we make about the pain, versus the pain itself. And so there's the pain of the trauma, and then there's like the adding on of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? Like, how could he do that to me? How could I do that to him? Right? And it just amplifies it unnecessarily. But really what I do with it is just be with the sensations. And so it's the practice of learning first to feel the sensations at all, and then learning to become equanimous with them, which is to observe them as they are. And that can be done through the most basic meditation ever. It's like just sitting there and being with your natural breath and observing all the crazy shit that goes on in your head and throughout your body for like 10 minutes every day. And then through that, you just cultivate this level of like this ability to differentiate between story versus reality.
100%. And I love how you actually mentioned that meditation is witnessing all the stuff. Because I think a lot of people have this misconception that they're not doing meditation right because there's no silence. And it's like, no, actually, when you meditate, there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's just bearing witness to it all. So I love that you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yes, I love that you re-mentioned it, because it is like it is so important to understand that like in your meditation, and this is what one of my teachers said to me. She's like, if you're experiencing a hectic, chaotic, full-on meditation, you're doing the work. You're actually clearing all the stuff. If you're really peaceful, it's like you probably don't need to do it. Like go to the beach or something.
Yes. Amazing. And I think like people start this meditation practice and they're like, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. So they just stop.
Yeah.
There's no one really talking to them about, no, that's actually perfect. That's exactly how it should be. That, and should, I use very lightly there, but it is definitely being able to witness all of our shit in the moment and just actually being with it. And we're so taught to push away or to go and do something or to not witness it, so it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's like if I leave my, because this happens to me like every day. Like every day my meditation is like, oh, like did I actually set the timer right? Surely it's been 15 minutes. Like I really need to do that task. Does it even matter? Like stop thinking.
Oh my God, stop thinking about it. You're supposed to be meditating. And then you have this like inner war with yourself, like, oh, I'm not supposed to.
Right. But then, and this is the piece, it's like if you leave halfway through, you're basically gone into committed to a surgery of the mind to like create a deep healing. And you just like halfway through, you're like, nah, it. And like all that stuff is kind of like bubbled up and you're just like, oh, well, like there's no actual clearing of it. So it's like you wouldn't leave in the middle of a heart operation because it hurts. Like you stay there until the end.
Totally. And the thing is too, if we bubble that up to the surface and then we don't do anything with it, you're going to end up in tears later that day, end up raging out at somebody later that day because you've literally allowed something to come to the surface that wants to be seen, and then you've not actually allowed the time for it to be heard and felt and seen. So it will come back with a vengeance. That's my experience anyway.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So just do the work and sit with it in your own privacy of your own.
We did before we started this podcast. I know we said we were going to kind of shape this towards your audience, which is mostly parents.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I will speak to that, and I'll just say it's like being a parent. Not that I'm one, but I've seen, and I have so much respect for them because it's like you're constantly in survival mode because there's children like about to fall off like the fence, like shitting themselves, and one of them wants chicken nuggets. Like it's just so extreme. It's so extreme.
I love how you just summed up parenting.
Yeah. And you're like, what's the priority? And so it is, it's like, it's really important then to learn to actually be with ourselves. Like, and like you said, allow the completion of the clearing, because otherwise it will definitely show up when you're being triggered and you're desperately in survival mode and you're in fear and all these wounds are being activated of, am I a good mother, am I doing it right, even though I know that's impossible at an intellectual level. It's like it's still going to be there, the guilt of it, like I'm never doing enough. And so it's really important to actually take the time out and be with yourself for that like little 10 minutes so that you can just develop the ability or the muscle of presence during those times, so that when you're in that hectic environment, when you're trying to choose between the kid that's falling off the fence and the kid covered in diarrhea, like you can, you can, it's true, right? You can pull it all in back to the moment and be like, cool, okay, this is what's most important. And my shit, like that is bubbling up, like I can hold space for myself later rather than just letting it erupt in that moment.
Right. And I think as a mum, I so can resonate with what you're saying, because you get to a point when you, and I know for me, before I got to this point of being conscious and intentional and how I show up as a parent and as a person, we're just so reactive. And it's, if you've got a child that's, particularly if you've got a child that's lashing out, then you lash back and or you've got you've got a child that's doing something that is putting themselves in danger, and they don't conceptualize that. They don't know what that means because they've obviously never experienced that. But we create all these stories around it, and then we come with all of our fears. what you're saying is when we can come back and actually exercise that muscle to be present and to be centered in who we are, in our truth, then we can actually be able to respond to that situation with more certainty.
Yeah, with certainty and with love.
Mm.
Because, like, so I guess the reason I can speak to this is because I was a primary school teacher for 3 years. So I had like 30 little kids just in my class, like, yeah, creating chaos and mayhem. And it's like there is such a difference. Like, they listen when I yell at them with love, you know?
Explain what that means to
Okay,
us.
so like compassionate.
Yelling at a child and yelling at them with love.
Yeah. Because it's not the action that's wrong, it's the intention behind it. And children are super sensitive. They can feel all the energy and the emotion behind everything you do. You can be like desperately unhappy and you think you're covering up, but your kid knows, right? And so yeah, and so the difference between yelling or compassionate anger versus like just fear driven anger is like, if you yell, if a child does something really, really dangerous, right, you need to impart to them, like, don't do that again. And if you're just yelling at them because you're terrified, the experience for them is going to be that they're terrified.
Mm.
And not only that, they'll associate it with you and they'll forever like feel in their body, not forever, but they will feel in their body that they were the source of your deep terror, and they'll make themselves wrong.
Mm.
Right? Whereas if you if you're there with them and in love, like, so the difference as an example is like, it's like you could have hurt yourself. How you put yourself in danger. Don't ever do that again. You've ruined your day, right? It's like there's so much pain in that, like so much pain, like, and guilt and shame for the kid versus like, how dare you put yourself in that much danger? I love you so much.
I'm worried for your well-being and
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's like, and then the kid still has that kind of experience of like, oh, but then also like there's kind of like, oh, like yeah, it's like, oh, they're so angry but they love me so much, so and so they get this experience, of like you did something wrong and you're still lovable versus you did something wrong and like you should be ashamed of it. So it's like, and the thing is, yeah, sometimes you really do need to yell because some children don't understand. Like, I had some really like children from abusive homes, and they did not receive anything you said unless you raise your voice, because that's how their parents treated them. And it's like, during really difficult times, I would do that because it was their language. But then you can still come from love in it. You know, it's like, you are so much better than this. You know that. I've seen how amazing you can be. How dare you do this? You know? And it's, again, it's the same kind of like
Inspiring them with almost like intentional tonality that they understand. Love that.
And it's, yeah, and I guess the final piece is it's just so much easier to be able to do that when you are in love with yourself.
Yes. And
Mm.
funnily enough, that's what I was actually going to ask you to speak into next. So your brilliance and medicine part of, you've got plenty, but part of your brilliance and medicine that you bring to the world is this uniqueness, this unique ability to be in your truth and to shine a light and be the permission piece for others to step into their authentic personality, their unique authentic personality. How can you, because you do this probably, I want to say probably one of the best that I've ever seen, someone who really epitomizes and embodies unique personality. So I would love for you to share maybe 3 tips. How can a parent listening to this who is now going to go and do all their breath work and going to go and sit with their shadow and do all the things, step into and start speaking just to figure out what their actual truth is, but start to actually be and honor and show up as their authentic, unique personality?
All right, the first one is going to be super boring, but
Awesome.
it has been everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we can feel how our bodies really feel, then we can discern the truth. But if we can't feel our emotions, and emotions are a physiological reaction first, we can't feel them, well, then we lose the internal compass of what's the truth and what's not. And the second thing would be to be spontaneous and make mistakes.
That one. Yes. Make mistakes.
Make mistakes. Do weird shit. It's like, do I want that? It's like, I don't know. So I guess I'll just fall forward and see what happens, and then just like fall into it. And then when you're there, you'll know. It's like, oh no, I didn't want to do that. And it's like, cool, well, don't do it again.
So it's kind of like we're all of a sudden being kids, and being kids in an open forum where we're going to be judged, but we don't really care. We don't have necessarily that parent that is shaming us into, you can't do that. And you're like, well, good, I'm going to do whatever I want, which is a type of rebellion, really. And we start rebelling into self-expression.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah, like there's no rules now. We created all the rules together, and now we get to break them because they don't actually matter. It's like, if you want to like dance down the street, do it. Like, I've recently started doing that, and some people think it's weird, some people will find it joyful, but ultimately I find it amazing. So I just want to do it, and that is enough. And so so being spontaneous as well is like a big one, because it's like moment to moment, who you are authentically changes. So it's honoring in that moment. I feel like laughing out loud. I feel like dancing like a crazy person. I feel like getting a massage, whatever, and understanding that all of that is always in flux and in flow, and it's always changing. And so other people are going to try and cling on to you as something set in stone, a box. No, you like dancing, you like singing all the time. What's wrong with you? There must be something wrong, right? And it's understanding that they're just trying to get their own level of safety. They're just trying to make sense of the world so they can feel okay in their little box, but you don't need to be in that box. Like, you get to be whoever you are, moment to moment, maximum fucking joy, so that you are free, and then your freedom sets them free, right? If you're consistent in that just being yourself repeatedly, people will eventually let go of trying to box you in, because they're like, well, it doesn't work and it's tiring. And then they will be like, man, she looks like she's having fun, maybe I should do it too.
For you to share and speak into is, I know when I first started doing that, I had these, the ego, the voices in my head, crazy, but the voices in my head saying, people are going to judge you, people are looking at you, people, but all the narratives.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you get from being so consumed by what other people think, being a people pleaser, all of those narratives, to just doing what actually lights you up and makes you feel good?
Great question. Oh, that totally takes me back, because I still have the stories, right? Like, even now I'm like, oh no, like I've been sparing too much. I haven't really seemed like I'm very present, maybe. Like, are parents really going to get value from this, right? So all the stories are there. And so what does it come back to? What was the journey for me? Because I was a massive people pleaser. That's what was suffocating me for so long. It's honoring how you feel and locating moments where you've been inauthentic and sharing them. Yeah, because it's like, as a people pleaser myself, like, there's still that in me. There are times when I'm like agreeing with something and I'm like, oh God, like, I actually don't agree at all. And now I feel so gross. What do I do? And it's like, and to really be authentic and to express, well, it's like, okay, I've got to like be like, hey guys, so actually I was being authentic because I felt like I really want you guys to love me, and I'm scared that if I voice my opinion, you're all gonna kick me out of the group, right? And it's just honoring that, like, and sadly there is no magical cure for like, how do you not feel the pain of resistance? But there is this beautiful thing where it's like, the amount of resistance that you feel correlates exactly to the transformation that you'll receive. So the more intense your feeling of like, oh, I don't want to say this, what if everyone judges me? Like, as soon as you take the action to move through that, honoring how you feel, voicing how you feel, like, hi guys, I'm scared and I'm doing it anyway. Right? The intensity of that matches whatever transformation you're going to receive afterwards.
Totally. And I speak so much into generally the level of pain that we experience will experience the same, if not more pleasure. And normally it's the one conversation, like the most uncomfortable conversation that we need to have, where you'll have the biggest breakthrough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Oh.
And here you are thinking like, oh, what can I bring to parents?
Yeah.
I just knew your brilliance.
Stop.
I know what's in your soul. I would love to know, what is one piece of advice or what's one thing that has stood out for you in your transformation journey that has really been a real big pinnacle moment, whether it be advice you've received, a training that you've done, or something that's really stood out as like.
There's two pieces to this. I did a training course last year where we had to come up with a way to create the most impact in the world in our lunch break as a team. And it was a leadership course and I really wanted to do well. And I hadn't really said anything. So I remembered that one of my friends had done a charity, had raised funds for charity. And I said, oh, why don't we do a fundraiser over the lunch break? Because my friend raised 33,000 in 90 minutes.
Oof.
Yeah. And then everybody was like, oh my God, that's sick. And I was like, I know. And I felt so significant because everyone's like looking at me, telling me I have a sick idea. I'm like, yes. And then everybody left. Okay. And this is where I was like, she'll never leave me. I had this like weird feeling. I'm like, what is that? And then I felt this like sinking feeling and it just went, bleh, and it landed in the pit of my stomach. And I was like, oh my God. And I just started speaking the feeling. And it was like, I just made that up.
Wow.
Like I lied. Like I knew that someone had done a fundraiser and they'd raised a lot of money in a short amount of time. I had no idea how much and I had no idea how long it took them. And so I was like, dude, you just lied to your entire group and they're all going to go do this task now because of your idea. Everyone came back and I was like, guys, I just made everything up. And they all like kind of laughed it off. But I was left with this like kind of gut wrenching guilt because I was like, oh, like, but I'm different now. I'm spiritual, aren't I? Like, I don't do shit like that anymore. Significance isn't my thing. I'm all about connection. I'm a hippie. I don't wear shoes. And then there were two massive pieces from that because it took like 2 days, maybe even longer, before I actually had the experience of feeling so ashamed and so guilty that I had done that. Like, and just so disgusted with who I was. And I went through this huge process of like forgiving myself. And I was like, no, like you didn't go into this course to be your perfect, spiritual, amazing self. You went into the course to find out like what patterns are still holding you back. How can I be the truest version of myself? And so the two pieces there, which were most transformative, were like, go into the arena and make all the mistakes so that you can actually see how you unconsciously show up and be like that's real courage. Like going into an arena where you know how to win is bullshit. Go into a place like the wilderness and you can it up because you're so scared and you need significance.
And that's literally parenting.
Yes.
Arena is that arena perfectly.
You cannot win.
You can't win, and you've got no idea what you're doing.
Exactly, and you just keep going in because you love them.
And people go back 3, 4, 5 times. You've gone back once.
It's true.
Then what's your second piece?
And the second piece is you do that, and then you forgive yourself for it. As quickly as it shows up, forgive yourself for it because it's all learning. Totally. And there is no end goal. You're never going to get it right. Being a parent is impossible.
Yes. And I think too, it's interesting to witness, like that's a perfect example of when we come from like shadow. Because to me, I wouldn't have even thought there was a bad thing, because in NLP terms, that's just a metaphor. Like, you've just created a metaphor. So you've just created something, amplified something, adjusted something to be able to inspire people to lift up. And that's what we do in NLP. So from my model of the world, I'm like, yeah, you have just like lifted the roof, given people hope, because there is examples in history where there's been records that haven't been broken for years until someone was told that it was broken, and then all of a sudden everyone broke it. Right? So you've literally, what you've effectively done is just put the idea that it's possible in their minds. And yet the story that you have run is that, oh my God, I've told a lie. I want to speak into one where our shadow can show up and how it can look to ourselves, because we all have stories and we all have things that run for us unconsciously that we then shame, and we witness all of our emotions. But secondly, as parents, we have to make up shit. We just have to. Like
it's so true.
There is this element where it's like telling a lie, but it's a white lie, so it's okay. But if they can't do it, and they get incongruent because you're like, don't lie, and it's like, but I'm lying. So I wanted to speak into that, because as parents, we have this beautiful ability to be able to tell stories. It's not a lie. We get to tell stories where we get to inspire and lead. We get to actually do that in any place of leadership, whether it be in business, as a parent, as a friend, in anything that we do. And we get to use and create stories to be able to help people feel as though anything is possible. And nothing is possible until we believe it to be true. And if there's a story out there saying you can't do it, it can't be done, then that's exactly what happens. But if you all of a sudden turn around and have a story out there that says, yes, they did it, and they did it this long and this quick, and this is how much they made, then chances are they probably went and did the exact same thing, probably did it in less time, and probably created more money. All of a sudden it's possible. And we get to do that as parents. We get to do that as adults. So thank you for sharing that. That's potent.
What you just said has really landed for me as well. I didn't realize I was still shaming myself for that.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yes. And that is a perfect example of being able to witness this old stuff that sometimes we don't even realize comes up. And we're barraging ourselves with all of these emotions and stories, and we get to just it off. It's just a story. It's just a story. For as much as it takes to actually continue that story, we can change the story and it can mean something else.
Yeah.
We are the epitome. We are the moment of attachment for a story and for a meaning. And we can change it at any moment. Thank you for sharing that.
Beautiful. You are, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't even want this conversation to end. It's been so beautiful.
I know.
We have to wrap this up. I could be here all day. I would love for you to share with our audience where people can find you, how we can connect in with you, how we can get more of your magic, what you bring to the world. How can people find you, Ber?
Amazing. Thank you. So if you just search me Berber on Facebook, or Berenice Tan, it's BERENICETAN, then you can just message me and we'll just have a conversation. Otherwise, I'm Ber Meditation on Instagram as well.
Beautiful.
And yeah.
Do you have anything that's going on in your life right now? Any special offers that you would love to share with our audience?
100%. Yes, it is just so relevant right now. So there's something I'm running called the Trust Activation, which is 4 weeks of learning to trust your truth. And so yes. And I love what you said. It's like, like as parents, you get to make stories, you get to create worlds and magic and possibility for these kids. And it's like understanding that, the lie itself, lying is not the bad thing. When we talk about truth, we're talking about ultimate love. It's like, is it coming from love? Then it's good. The intention is pure. So it's like we don't like make the word lie wrong. It's just like what's the intention behind it? Are
Yeah.
you lying to create this like amazing experience for this child? Then go for it. And so part of my course is learning to discern between, is this action coming from love or coming from fear? And we do that through actual embodiment experiences. So we put ourselves, and myself included, like I don't make you do anything that I'm not going to do with you or have already done.
Mm.
And then we just put ourselves in really weird situations, like, and then we just see what shows up.
Yeah.
And then we forgive ourselves. And then we forgive ourselves for doing whatever it is that we did unconsciously. It's like one of the things we just did was like, we had to like go outside and like shout at the world what we love about ourselves. And it was just so interesting to see like how much resistance there was. 4 weeks, group coaching, it's fucking awesome. It's changing my life. Like every week I feel so much resistance to running it because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to show up and be myself and be true to me or else no one else will.
Hard.
Yeah. But then it's like so transformative. So
I am deeply honoring you, sister. Thank you so much for being here, being a part of BU. I think this has been such an epic episode. It's been so much fun to have you on and to have this conversation and just really tap into how to be you, which is the epitome of what this podcast is about. So I knew that you were going to bring your magic and your wisdom. I knew that you had resistance around it because you're not a parent. And you know, initially that was a story that I came up. I was like, oh, do I want to offer like this opportunity? But I thought, you know what, you've got too much magic to bring, to not come into this space and share that just because you're not a parent. And the thing is, we're actually all parents because we're all parenting ourselves and we're all leaders, and we always have kids in our space. And you, as you mentioned, you used to be a teacher. We always have kids in our space where we are actually parenting them. So we may not be a biological parent, but in truth, we are actually all parents. So thank you for saying yes, even though there was resistance and there were stories that came up. I'm honoring you because, again, as always, you're the full permission piece of what it means to be you.
thank you. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister.